let's spin the wheel and see what the topic is today. Okay, let's do it. Wow, it's funny because we talked about this yesterday a little bit. So today's topic is placenta. So, and I still have my bag here of childbirth education tools. It's just, just a baby's leg hanging out. We've got our baby. But more importantly, we have today's topic, which is the placenta. So the placenta, yesterday we covered the third stage of labor, which is the delivery or the birth, whatever you want to call it, of the placenta, which comes after the birth of the baby, right? So the baby is attached to the placenta via the umbilical cord. Now, I'm going to try to find a picture and see if I can include it on the video in YouTube. So I did have the experience a couple years back at my children's middle school science class to bring in an actual placenta that was donated by a doula client of mine, or two actually, to show the students an actual placenta. So it was pretty exciting, and most of the kids found it fascinating. So the placenta, it starts off when a baby is created, cells differentiate and they start forming the placenta, and the placenta is attached inside the uterus to the uterine wall. And what the placenta does is it acts as a filter between the mother's blood source and the baby's the mother's blood source brings in nutrients and interacts right there at the placenta at the wall of the uterus, and then the nutrients are delivered through the bloodstream, through the umbilical cord to the baby. So sometimes you'll hear people say like, oh, I had chocolate and the baby really reacted to the sugar, started kicking around in there because of the sugar. Well, what happened was the mother ate chocolate, digested the nutrients, the sugar went into her bloodstream, and then her bloodstream sugar transferred through the placenta to the baby. Now, what's interesting to note is that the placenta, it is awesome in that sometimes it protects us from things that are bad for us. So the placenta can actually filter out certain viruses and infections and keep the baby safe. But there's other things that pass through to the baby. So some of the chemicals that are found in smoking, so if the mother smokes while she's pregnant, the placenta isn't able to filter that out, and that is transmitted through the placenta to the baby. And other things like, harsh chemicals can be transferred that way, or medicines, medications, and that kind of thing. So the placenta, while it is pretty awesome at keeping some things away from our baby, it doesn't filter everything out. And sometimes you might hear the term, does it cross the placenta? Does it cross the barrier to the placenta? And that's what that means. So epidural, for an example, it is unlike IV pain medications that might be taken in labor, in that the medication does not cross the placenta and reach the baby. So whereas IV medications, so if you decided to take a narcotic like a Nubain or morphine or something like that, the baby could feel the effects of the IV narcotic, because the placenta, it does cross the placenta. So it's something to think about when you're thinking about your choices for labor. But the placenta comes out after the baby is born. The body goes through a series of hormone changes that tells the uterus to release the placenta. So where the placenta is attached inside the uterus, the uterus lets go of the placenta drops down, usually right on the cervix, often feeling kind of pressure for mom, that you bear down and deliver the placenta. Now, one question I've had about the placenta is, does it hurt delivering the placenta? Like, what does the placenta feel like? So the good news about this is there's no bones in the placenta. Obviously, this is fake, but bones and muscle, no bones. So a lot easier to deliver the placenta. It is important that the placenta comes out in its entirety, because if any pieces were left inside the uterus, the placenta, it gives off hormones, and it can have an effect. Those hormones that the placenta has can have an effect on the production of milk for breastfeeding. And so usually after the placenta comes out, your care provider will do a quick check to make sure that it came out in whole, that they can see there's no broken edges, that it's has come out altogether. So that's really important. There are a couple of things that are risk factors for giving birth with the placenta. Well, there's one main one where when the placenta starts growing, attaching to the uterus, if the placenta attaches to the bottom, like right over the cervix, so that if you can imagine, the cervix has to open. If the placenta attaches above the cervix like this, and we've got baby up here, the baby cannot be born vaginally. There has to be born via a cesarean birth, because we need for the baby to have full access to the placenta for the entire time until the baby is born. So the placenta cannot be born before the baby, and this is called Placenta Previa. So if you're diagnosed with Placenta Previa, it would mean that you would need your baby would need to be born via cesarean birth. Sometimes a placenta can be a low-lying placenta, which is where it is attached on the lower segment of the uterus. And as the uterus grows, the placenta will move away from the cervix often, not always. And if you have been diagnosed with a low-lying placenta, your care provider will often do some extra ultrasound scans to check and see if that placenta has moved away from the cervix. If it has, generally you will have the opportunity to birth vaginally. If it is still blocking the cervix, then a cesarean birth is how your baby will enter the world. So the placenta is super important, and it is interesting to note a couple other things you might hear your care provider say about placentas. Sometimes you might hear, oh, I have an anterior placenta. And what that means is that if you can imagine the uterus being like a ball like this, an anterior placenta would be when the placenta attaches to the front side of your uterus. So it is on the front side of your belly. And if you have an anterior placenta, the one thing that you might note is that you might not feel big kicks and movements like other people might feel, because your baby is actually kicking through the placenta, which is fine. But you might not feel those big movements like maybe you have friends or family that talk about, oh, I see elbows pass and knees pass. If you have an anterior placenta, you might not notice that. The other thing that you might hear about placentas is if the placenta, there is an issue that can happen. It is rare, but it is when the placenta does not detach well, and it actually grows into the uterus, and it's called placenta accretia. And it is a very serious condition that usually requires surgery immediately after a birth. And that is why making sure that our placenta comes out is what our care providers are really focused on after the baby is born. So if you notice, if you're the support person, notice that your nurse and your doctor and your midwife might be really trying to make sure the uterus clamps down and looking at the placenta and talking about it. It's because it is a very key part of the health of mother to make sure the uterus clamps down and make sure the placenta leaves in its entirety. So that is a lot about the placenta. What thoughts do you have about the placenta? Or do you have questions about it? I would love to hear. Please enter in the comments below. If you found this video helpful or fun, give me a like so that other people can find it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos just like today. Talk to you guys later. Bye.